On the 15th of August, 1620, the Pilgrim Fathers left Southampton on the Mayflower. There were 66 men, 26 women and 10 children. The voyage took 67 days and 1 man died and 1 child was born. This memorial was unveiled in 1913 and has a copper replica of the Mayflower on the top. Town Quay, one of the main thoroughfares in Southampton. We've got links to the Isle of Wight, we've got the docks. Well, this is where the water came right up to. And the wool house, built in 1417 by the Cistercian monks of Bugle, and it was to store their wool. Wool was the backbone of England. To this day, the Chancellor sits on a red cushion. Now, that's not just any old cushion. It's a wool sack, and it's to show England's supremacy in the wool trade. During the 18th century, you can see by the bars, it was used to hold French prisoners of war. During the 19th and 20th century, it was used for storing grain. Well, now, it's our maritime museum. And in here, we've got everything from the Queen Mary to Titanic. So let's go and take a look. The Titanic. There was approximately 898 crew, 549 had Southampton addresses, and only 212 came home. There was a national outcry. 413,000 was raised nationally, 41,000 from the citizens of Southampton. When the ship sank at 2:20, the crew's wages stopped and they were no longer employed by White Star Line. Take this watch, look. It's rusted at 10 to 2 when he obviously jumped into the water. Some rusty old keys there and some locker keys. The Queen Mary, pride of Southampton. Every school was given so many tickets for children to go onto Town Quay and watch her leave. And I was one of the lucky ones that was picked from the draw from Deanery School. Now, do you remember me saying about the French prisoners of war back in the 18th century? Well, if you look up, you can see where they carved their names in the chestnut beams. And these galleons were made by the French prisoners out of the bones of their food. We're coming up Bugle Street now. Now, Southampton was very, very badly bombed during the Second World War, but hardly any of Bugle Street have been touched. Tudor House was built between 1510 and 1518 by Sir John Daltrey. Now, he was a customs official, MP and Sheriff of Hampshire. Daltrey's widow married Sir Richard Lister, who was Lord Chief Justice of England. Now, we know Henry VIII visited Tudor House, and it is said that Anne Boleyn loved the gardens. The bollards are based on the originals in Southwark, which is the end of a cannon with the ball shoved in the end. The street light is one of the 3 remaining of the original gas street lights in Southampton. The other 2 are outside the Dolphin Hotel. The parish rooms, the first national school sponsored by the Church of England. And the red bricks, site of a medieval street. And St Michael's Church, the oldest building in Southampton, built 1070 and dedicated to St Michael, the patron saint of Normandy. This font is nearly a millennium old. It was given to the church by William the Conqueror's grandson, Henry Dubois, who was Bishop of Winchester, and it's one of only 7 in the country. In 1338, the French raided Southampton. They ran up Bugle Street and everyone hid in St Michael's Church. They slayed everyone within the church. The church had to be consecrated. But the main pirate, all the money he stole and he looted, he went back to the Mediterranean and started the Principality of Monaco. Carlo Grimaldi, Mount Carlo. The citizens of Southampton paid for that. God's House Tower, built in 1417. It's the first purpose-built artillery fortification in England. It carried cannon. It housed the town gunner who made gunpowder. In fact, if you look up, you can even see the keyhole-shaped gun ports. And now, it's our archaeology museum. Erotic Roman pots, the finest Venetian glass in the country, even the bones of a medieval monkey. Let's go and have a look. You know, this has got to be some of the finest Venetian glass in the country. And as you can see, some of it came from Simnel Street and Bugle Street, where we've just been. If you tried to leave Romano and you were a glass blower, they would hang you. But if you came here, you were knighted. Everyone wanted the Venetian glass. Now, when they unloaded the ships at the West Quay, if they unloaded some glass and had a flaw in it, it was set aside to be made into a small flask. And the Italian for flask is fiasco. Do you know, in all the years I've been coming into the Archaeology Museum and I've heard all about it, and there it is. The bones of a medieval monkey. It was found in Cuckoo Lane, and it was brought over by a merchant, probably from Spain. I promised you erotic Roman pots. Well, I've been looking around, well, that could be it. Then again, I suppose that could, but... Oh, you'll have to come and see this for yourself. I grew up here. My mum had the pub for 25 years. It was then called the Queen, and it was opened in 1897 for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. Now, if you'd have lived in Simnel Street in the 1880s, there was 5 pubs, 15 lodging houses, and over 300 people, and no flushing toilets. Now, if you got a night's lodging, firstly, it was on straw, and secondly, you most probably got in bed with 3 other people you'd never met before in your life. Well, the council just sidestepped the issue, and it wasn't until the death of a local prostitute by the name of Ellen Wren, whose head was in a pile of rubbish and she was naked. It was September, and no one smelt her decomposed body. Well, this time the council had to act and built the first ever council houses. When I lived in the pub, this place was always locked up. The only time it was ever used was during the Second World War as an air raid shelter. And yes, every bit of this stone come from Normandy in France. Built around 1320, we exported wool, imported wine, and this is where a rich wine merchant stored all his wine. The steps are wide enough for a pipe of wine. That's 126 gallon. Now, the largest casks of wines were called tuns. Now, say I was a rich wine merchant and I wanted you to ship my wine over from Normandy. We'd negotiate on a price. Then I'd ask you, how many of these tons can your ship carry? And that's how tonnage started. This has got to be one of the finest medieval vaults in England, underneath the council house. Well, that's it for this tour of Southampton. But there's plenty more to see, and I hope I have the opportunity to show you some more.
There are more details about the places we've visited during the Grand Tour on our website. That's www.meridian.tv.com.